Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. So guys, as you can see in the title, I'm here to give my 2 cents on Jodian Fearon's case. I felt compelled to come and do this video as I saw the ruling this morning on the Jamaica Gleaner website, where they have ruled out any criminal charges in regards to the case. So I'm going to be giving my 2 cents on this and just to explain to you guys why Jodian Fearon won't get any justice in the way that people are expecting. So firstly, let's take a look at the facts, right? So the facts are that Jodian Fearon was denied treatment after they suspected or they assumed that she might have COVID-19. So we know that it's that old fear and lack of understanding of COVID-19, where they felt that Jodian might, where they felt Jodian was exhibiting signs of COVID-19. So they denied her any form of treatment. And we know factually that after being denied, she later had the baby and she died afterwards. Now, looking at the whole bigger picture, of course, what a tragic story. I didn't have a YouTube channel when the story came out, but I did follow the story, and it was a tragic situation, very bad in so many sense of the word. Now, we're looking at the law, and a lot of times we tend to use our emotions when it comes on to decision making. But I can't come from an emotional place. I have to come from a realistic place on what the law is and how that ties into how they would address the whole charges brought against Andrews and the consultant, you name it. Now, at the end of the day, we have to look at the fact that if you are to prove criminal charges, you have to be able to establish that, one, these doctors, consultants, you name it, everyone that was involved in her care, deliberately, killed her. You have to use that word, killed her. They deliberately wanted her to die. They basically, that was their agenda, premeditated or not. That was their agenda from the get-go. So you have to put that out there, that in order to prove a criminal case, it has to be something. It has to be a criminal act. Now, we're looking at this situation where someone who was previously a healthcare worker, I look at it from that stance, and I also look at some of the things that need to change within the community of healthcare, right? And not only healthcare, this is something that happens also in the military, and also, obviously, you can see it happens in healthcare. So we know what happened to Jodian Fearon was tragic. It was despicable. We know that is really bad. But if you're looking at it from a legal perspective, a legal standpoint, it's going to be very difficult to prove criminal negligence. It's going to be difficult because, like I said earlier, you have to prove that these doctors deliberately killed Jodian. Now let's look at what negligence mean and how that ties in. Now, obviously, negligence, someone is in your care. It's your responsibility to look after that individual, and you have neglected your responsibility, and as a result, the person was harmed during the process, i.e., what has happened. So we know for a fact that this is negligence. We know that she was denied something that was fundamentally right for her. We know that what happened was inhumane, irregardless of one's fear as a healthcare worker. Your number one priority is to your patient. This is why when we do our courses, it's always reiterated that your priority is to your patient, just to make sure and to ensure that your patient gets the best care. Whether or not the person has an illness that you're fearful of, you just have to take the necessary precautions, but you have to ensure that your patient's safety is paramount. So we know all of those facts to be true, that she was denied that fundamental right to be cared for, to be put at the forefront, her health, etc., because that's the duty and responsibility of healthcare workers. That's what they're there to do. Now I'm going to go on to why the court would rule out any criminal charges. And we have to understand, guys, that at the end of the day, we can have our feelings and our emotions, but there's something called a justice system. And as much as the case really touched me and as much as I was disgusted by this whole thing, I cannot fall on the side of, oh, they're out to get people, etc. Paula Llewellyn is doing her job in this situation. But don't get me wrong, I'm going to get to the part where there's something wrong that needs to be changed. So we know that it's so wrong, but to prove a criminal case, you have to prove that without a shadow of a doubt, they saw her death and they allowed her death. Bear in mind. So that's something very important that you have to prove, which in this case is going to be very difficult to prove. We're talking about now hospitals and hospital military system. Now, I used to work for the service, as you guys are aware, and in the service, my day-to-day role was working in the hospital. So I have kind of like best of both worlds and best of both worlds in a sense. And what I know is that when it comes on to the hospital, military, you name it, it is like a community. And a community equivalents to like a society. So it's like a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And what that means is that in the military and also in the hospital, you're like a family, which means if a patient comes in, and this is one of the things that I find that is very wrong. If a patient has a dispute with one of your co-workers, it is not your responsibility. You can't say, oh, you're right in front of the patient. You're not allowed to tell your co-worker off in front of the patient. A lot of times people get in trouble for that. You have to then take the co-worker aside and talk to the co-worker. Because if you tell the co-worker off, you'll be seen as a traitor. It's like you're going outside of that brother sisterhood. You're going outside of that family. Because believe it or not, in the healthcare service, it's like you have to protect each other. And this goes down to the public and how the public treats us as healthcare workers and also military personnel, whether it be the police, you name it. There's always this fight. There's this lack of unity and trust. Even right now, people will tell you they go to the public hospital and the treatment is not the best. So people don't really have faith in the system when it comes on to the public, when it comes on to the hospitals, and when it comes on to the security forces. Because again, there's this enmity between them. And don't get me wrong, some of the times the accusations against the healthcare workers, the health system is not true. And the accusations against security forces are not necessarily true. But we're just saying some of the accusations are true, some are not. But then people tend to formulate their opinions based on just the negative, and that just push out there. So what we're saying is, whether or not, because none of us were there, we don't know specifically if we can read the minds of the doctors or the nurses to know that they deliberately killed Jodian. So whether or not we're there, even if, and this is what is so bad. Even if one of the nurses were saying to the doctors, look at her, we need to do something, we need to care for her, what you're doing is wrong, or whether or not the doctor was saying to another doctor, what you're doing is wrong, you will never know that, because there's this community, there's this brotherhood, sisterhood, where healthcare workers will look out for healthcare workers, because in their opinions, to speak out against wrongdoings against each other, it's like you're selling out. It's like you're selling out, which is very bad. You see, I hear a lot of people saying if Jodian Fearon had a different surname, or if she was rich, you name it, then she would have been dealt with in a different manner. And whilst I agree with that, and I believe that wholeheartedly, to be completely honest, this is really just so many people. This is so many's reality of being treated less than because of their address, because of their creed, because of how they look, you name it. And this is something that really needs to stop. Jamaica needs to rise up from this whole classism. Jamaica needs to do better. It is so sad when someone treats you different for circumstances you don't even have control over. You can't control if you're born rich or born poor. This is just your reality. And to be denied something, which I'm not going to say it's necessarily to do with her creed or whatever, or that. I just think they were afraid of the COVID. They're just afraid of it, and they just chose to. I just think they were just afraid of it, and they don't understand COVID that well, and they just panicked. It would be like when people had HIV back in the day, and even doctors used to be so afraid to deal with these patients. So I'm just gonna put it down to that. But at the end of the day, it is true that based on where you're from, your background, your surname, you name it, what you have, what you don't have, determines sometimes how you're treated by these services, whether it be the hospital, the police force, you name it. And this has got to stop. People need to be treated with equality. People need to be treated with the same level of respect and dignity that you treat any rich man or anyone in high society, you name it. People should not be treated less than because of their background or their creed. And this is just something that is really troubling. Something like that. And I really hope that they did not willingly kill that girl. I really hope that it wasn't because of who she was or where she was from. I really hope that, because that is disgusting. You know, I really hope something comes out of this for this young lady, which I know a lawsuit and some form of negligence. But unfortunately, criminal negligence, you'll be hard pressed. Unfortunately so, but it's just the reality. But guys, I do hope you have yourself a wonderful day. Stay blessed and let's be hopeful. Hey guys, until next time, Godspeed. Big up.